Thank you, Hare Krishna. So I'll start with Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Giridharadhari Nandana Jaya Dhajanandana Jamanatmiranta Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Jaya Dhajanandana Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Kunja Bihari Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Jaya Kunja Jaya Shipana Paramahansa Parivakachari Sasasima Parivakachari Yudan Swami Prabhupada ki jai, ISKCON Bibli Foundation Jai Prabhupada ki jai, ISKCON Guruji ji, Parampara Jai Goswami ji, Namacharya Saridas Thakur ji, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivati Gaur Bhakti ji, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Girikavadhanti Tasimani Dali Gangamai Jamunamai Bhakti Devi Samveda Bhakti Anapati Dham Shri Shri Radha Giri Shri Shri Govintai Shri Shri Jagannath Subhadra Viraj Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Shri Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So we'll read from Srila Prabhupada Lilamitra by His Holiness Sasidas Goswami Maharaj. Prabhupada Lilamitra ki jai. So we are on page 449, 549. The crowd of hippies had formed line on either side of the narrow passage through which Swami would. I'm not sure whether I'm on the right page. Pati?
I'm sharing the screen. Do you want to read from the screen or?
What page are you on?
569.
549?
569.
Oh, 569. 569. Okay, 1 second. 569. Yeah, sorry, the question. Okay. We'll start where Prabhuji left yesterday. To Mukunda's wife, Janki, Krishna consciousness meant dealing in a personal way with Swamiji. As long as he was around, she was all right. She enjoyed asking questions, serving him, and learning from him how to cook. She didn't care much for studying the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but she quickly developed an intense attraction for him. Janaki, there were a group of us sitting around in Swamiji's apartment, and I asked him if he had any children. He looked at me as if I had said something strange, and he said, You are not my child? I said, well, yes. And he said, are not all these my children? And his answer was so quick that I never doubted that he seriously meant what he said. For several hours each morning, Prabhupada showed Janki, John, and others how to cook. One day, in the kitchen, he noticed a kind of berry he had never tasted, and he asked Janki, "What's the way?" She told him, "Strawberries." He immediately popped one into his mouth, saying, "That's very tasty." And he proceeded to eat another and another. Actually, very tasty. One time, Janki was making a whipped cream when Srila Prabhupada came into the kitchen and asked, "What's that?" She replied, "It's whipped cream." "What is whipped cream?" he asked. It's a cream," she replied, "but when you beat it up, it flops up into a more solid form." Although always adamant about kitchen rules, one of the most important being that no one should eat in the kitchen, Srila Prabhupada immediately dipped his finger into the whipped cream and tasted it. "This is yoga," he said. In a light-hearted, reprimanding way that was her pleasure, Janki replied, "No, Swamiji, it's whipped cream." Srila Prabhupada corrected her, "No, it's yogurt." And again he put his finger into it and tasted it, saying, "Oh, it tastes very nice." "Swamiji," Janki accused him, "you are eating in the kitchen." Srila Prabhupada merely smiled and shook his head back and forth, saying, "That is all right." Janki, one time I told him, "Swamiji, I had the most exciting dream. We were all on a planet of our very own, and everybody from Earth and others and from Earth had come there. They had all become pure devotees, and they were all chanting. You were sitting on a very special chair right off the ground, and the whole earth was clapping and chanting Hare Krishna." Swamiji smiled and said, "Oh, that's such a lovely dream." So Prabhupada ki jai. So we'll stop here. So those who joined late, again, welcome this morning to Srimad Bhagavatam class. We are reading from Canto 4, chapter 29, and today's verse is verse 14. The chapter is headed, Talks between Narada and King Prashinibhari. So we start the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mata, you can share the screen. This verse.
Just give me a minute, Prabhu.
Okay. Before that, say kind of Om Jnanatamidasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshamitam Yanai Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chakalpadarubhesha Kipasindhuvicha Pitanam Pavibhyo Vishnabhyo Namo Namaha Naran Muskritam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jagad Astaprayesu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Sloke Bhakti Bhakti Hituki. So here's the verse displayed in the screen. Verse Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter 29, verse 14. So here we go. Asuri Mitram Arvadvara Vayo Gaminarati Upasito Durmada Prokto Nitir Guda Uchete. Asuri Mitram Arvadvara Vyavyayo Graminam Ati Upasto Durmada Prokto Nitir Guda Uchyate. Anybody would like to recite? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Shall
Hare
I? Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Asuri medhram arvadvar vyavayo graminamratihi upastho durmadah prokto nirritir guda uchyate. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Dalvat
Krishna.
Pranam. May I please?
Sure, Mataji. Go ahead.
Asuri medham arvagadvar vaivago graminam upsthodha durmadaha prokto niritire gudayuchyate. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
so much, Hare Krishna. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll go to synonyms. Anybody would like to try the synonyms? Okay, I'll do this. Asuri, call Asuri. Medram, the genital. Arvak, of the fools and rascals. Dwaha, gate. Vyavyaha, affirming sexual affairs. Vyaminam, of common men. Rati, attraction. Upasa, the faculty of procreation. Durmada, Durmada. Prokta is called. Niti, Nitihi, Niti. Buddha rectum. Uchyate is called. Translation prepared by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The city called Ramaka, which is approach to the lower gates of Asuri, the genital, is meant for sex, which is very pleasing to common men who are simply fools and rascals. The faculty of procreation is called Dumada, and the rectum is called Niti. Anybody would like to read the purport?
May I?
I'll try, Prabhu.
Yeah, sure, Prabhu.
Go on, Mataji. You can go, Mataji.
Go, Prabhuji. No worry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When the word becomes degraded, civilization becomes demonic. And for the common man, the rectum and genitals are taken seriously as the centers of all activities. Even in the sacred place of Vrindavan, India, unintelligent man pass off this rectum and genital business as spiritual activity. Such people are called Sahajiya. According to philosophy, through sexual indulgence, one can elevate himself to the spiritual platform. From these verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, however, we understand that desires for sexual satisfaction are meant for Arvak, the lowest among men. To rectify these rascals and fools is very difficult. After all, the sex desires of common man are condemned in these verses. The word Durmada means wrongly directed, and Nirti means sinful activities. Although this clearly indicates that sex indulgence is abominable and misdirected, even from ordinary point of view, the Sahajiyas nonetheless passed themselves as devotees conducting spiritual activities. For this reason, Vrindavan is no longer visited by intelligent people. We are often asked why we are made our center in Vrindavan. From the external point of view, it can be concluded that Vrindavan has become degenerated due to the Sahajiya activities. Yet from the spiritual point of view, Vrindavan is the only place where all these sinful persons can be rectified by means of taking birth in the forms of dogs, hogs, and monkeys. By living in the Vrindavan as dog, hog, or monkey, the living entity can be elevated to spiritual platform in the next life. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for reading the purport. Namo Vishnudaya Krishnadaya Bhutale Shimate Tamal Krishna Goswami Dinami Namo Vishnudaya Krishnadaya Bhutale Shimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pchani Shesha Shanivadi Pushyata Desatarani. So before starting the Bhagavatam class, I'd like to ask you for your blessings to perform this service. It's a very purifying service. Had it not been for Srila Prabhupada, we won't be sitting here. So all glory to Srila Prabhupada for giving this nice translation purport. So enlightening. So today's verse is just continuation of the previous verses where the different parts of the body of the 9 gates are being enumerated or described in detail. It's already been done in chapter 25, verse 45 to 55. But here, Narad Muni is giving more detailed descriptions. So just a bit of recap, giving an overview of what's happening in this part of the Bhagavatam. We see that this narration is been given by Maitreya Muni to Vidura. Vidura met Maitreya Muni and he was asking all these very, very nice questions. And here Maitreya Muni is recapturing the transcendental pastimes of this Puranjana's Katha to Vidura. And within that, Maitreya is giving episode where actually Narad Muni, how Narad Muni came to rescue King Parikshit. So, as we know from previous chapters, King Parikshit is the descendant of Pritha Maharaj, but he was a great karmakandi and also a mystic yogi. So he was doing very, very elevated yajna, sacrificing many animals for the elevation to heavenly planets. He had 10 sons, the Prachetas, and for procreation, he asked his sons to go to the forest and to meditation and so they can enhance the procreation process. So the 10 sons, the Prachetas, when they were going, they were very fortunate to meet Nanda and Lord Shiva, and who gave them very nice instructions. And so they were doing tapasya for 10,000 years underwater. While they were doing tapasya, Narad Muni noticed that their father, King Prachinabarishad, was performing Digvi Yagna. Narad Muni being very, very compassionate to the living entity. He could see this is the wrong path the king was taking. And although his sons were being very elevated by the mercy of Lord Shiva, his father was going in the wrong direction. So out of great compassion, as we know, Narad Muni is very most compassionate saint in the Bhagavatam. And he went to the sacrifice place where king was doing this yagna, sacrificing animals. And he asked the king, what are you doing? What is the purpose of doing this? And he showed him how the animals are being sacrificed and killing in the yagna. We're waiting for him to depart and they can attack him. So then the king was very the king was also, I would say, humble enough to ask Narad Muni, what should we do? So he asked Narad Muni, please give us some knowledge. What is the purpose of this life? And here then Narad Muni narrates the pastimes or the allegory katha of the King Purajana in the 9 gates. So in this, we can see that Narad Muni is extremely compassionate. He is preaching according to the time, place, and circumstances. Here the king was very, very enamored to do this animal sacrifice. And Narad Muni could see that he was not going to listen to philosophy directly. So he did this katha in an allegorical way. And then he recounts what are the 9 gates, where they leads to it, and how King Purajana became a woman in the next life. This is explained in the previous chapters. One of the things that's really coming out of this narration, these previous chapters in this chapter, is Narad Muni's great compassion and his strategic thinking on how to win away the king from sinful activity and going to the hellish planet. And he's explaining this katha of the Puranjana in a very indirect way. And then end of the katha, we see that King Prachinabarishad is not sure what all this means. He's been listening very intently, but he's not getting there. He's not getting what Narad Muni is driving it. So he asks Naradji, we couldn't completely understand the purport of your words due to our attachment to karma, but expert in spiritual knowledge can understand them. So here, King Prachinabarishad is really coming out. Said, look, I know I'm listening to your katha, but I'm not getting what you're driving at. So then Narad Muni gets in an elaboration. What are these allegory means in different sections? So in this chapter 29, Naradji explained the 9 gates, what it really means. It's starting from the mouth, the nostrils, the ears, and then the lower parts. Today we are coming to the lower gates, the 2 lower gates. Here Prabhupada mentioning these are the lower gates, the Dharmata, and what it means, how it is viewed in the context. So the two lower gates are the Asuri, the genital, and the Dharmata, the rectum is called Niti. So these are the two last gates being left to be explained to the King Prachinabarishad. So Prabhupada starts at this purport in a very dramatic way. He says when the world becomes degraded, civilization becomes demonic, and for the common man, the rectum and genital are taken very seriously as the centers of all activity. So there are many reasons for the fall of civilization. There can be warfare, famine, and then there might be some depletion of resources, and just climate change. There's some of the reasons for civilization degradation. But here, Srila Prabhupada is coming to the main point. What causes civilization to collapse is the too much emphasis on genitals and rectum. This business, we can see from the history, Rome, Egypt, how all they fell because excessive attachment to sexuality. In the Bible, it's also mentioned the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. They were extremely infatuated with sexuality, so much so homosexuality was very rampant. And because of that, the Supreme Lord actually destroyed these two cities. It's a very poignant lesson for the humanity. So once the civilization goes slide down to sexuality and immorality, the consequence is that the resultant will be that it will be destroyed. So even in the current situation, we can see this is also happening very slowly. And gradually it is coming to that point. All the advertisement, all the media, all the politics involved, all of them are trying to please the general population, how to gratify their senses so they can get more votes and make the people lazy not to think how easy to control them through this sexuality. This promiscuity is leading to hellish marriage. We may say, like the Western countries, especially America and Europe, they may be very materially advanced, but inside there's a hollowness because they are not concentrating on the goal of life, which they don't understand. Was it not for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, this thing would have been really dismissed. But by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnavas, Acharyas, this important spiritual knowledge is being disseminated, and the government has been asked to put everything in more perspective, in a proper perspective, so they don't go down into this hellish situation of civilization collapse. So here, Prabhupada, then after the civilization collapse, Prabhupada is mentioning that even this thing has penetrated in such holy places in Vrindavan, where this business is going on as a part of spiritual activity. Prabhupada really condemns this business. Such people are called Sahajiyas. They take the pastime Radha and Krishna very cheaply and misinterpret them to satisfy their senses. This is very, very degrading situation. Even to have for such event to occur in a holy place like Vrindavan is very, very, even we cannot imagine this thing, but it's happening. And one of the what I should call the example, even recent time, we can read from the book by His Holiness Radhanath Swami in his book called The Coming Home. He mentions that while he was still a seeker and going around meeting different sadhus in Himalayas, different places, and when he came to Vrindavan, he was staying in one ashram for famous Baba. And they were really, the Baba was very elevated according to his disciple, but he later on found out the Baba was sleeping with different boys in different nights. And he just was shocked to see this. So this sort of shows that within the boundary of Vrindavan, there are the Sahaja people who are really polluting the place. And Prabhupada is quite right, he says how this is how it's happening, but in a very indirect way. We're trying to hide it, but it's coming out. So we can see This is not even new to Vrindavan, but this is also across the world and across different regions. We know from the Catholic Church, also Islam and Hindu priests, example, Asharam Babu, he was involved in this activity. He is actually serving a long jail at the moment, just exploiting disciples and doing all these horrendous things in the garb of spirituality. Catholic Church also has gone through this and still happening. Many bishops have been found to involve in this situation. In the Catholic Church, it says that the clergy supposed to follow vow of celibacy for a lifetime. But then there was a survey done some time back, I think 2,500 respondents. They found it in the last 25 years, less than 50% of the clergy follow the actual rules of celibacy. And only 2% of the clergy actually were really celibate. So that speaks a lot. So it's a difficult situation, difficult urge to control. And because they don't have the process and the purifying effect of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, they find it very difficult because it's being forced upon them artificially without the proper understanding. So even in Islam, we see so many cases where the Maulvis or the head priests involved in pornography, exploiting boys, and this is coming out. So it's nothing new, but to have this sort of thing happening in holy place of Vrindavan is really alarming, very concerning. So Prabhupada is saying this is age of Kali, and because the senses are not controlled, this is happening. And Prabhupada also elaborates on the Sahajas. The Sahaja mentality is very well explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. 1 second. It was quite rampant in the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and just after his departure. Some of the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu misinterpreted his philosophy, and they were very cheap. Because they once said, oh, we did not follow the scriptures, it's only for the neophyte. And then they were involved in these horrendous activities. And Prabhupada is very, very critical in this, in his purpose, like Prabhupada mentions. Let me see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila. 1 second. Chapter 17, verse 276. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 17, verse 276. I'm just trying to find the verse 276. Yeah. This is Prabhupada writing in this purport. He says, lusty materialists like the members of the Sahaja Sampradaya hanker after women, even others' wives. But when they try to ascribe the responsibility for their lusty activities to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they become offenders to Sarab Damodar and Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. In the Chaitanya Bhagavad Adi Khanda, chapter 15, it is said, Sabya Patra Stira Prati Nahi Parihasa. Sri Dekhi Dure Prabhu Hayena Ek Pasa. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never even joke with others' wives. As soon as he saw a woman coming, he would immediately give us ample room to pass without talking. He was extremely strict regarding the association of women. The Saja Hava goes as follows from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Although they indulged in lusty affairs with women, in his youth, Lord Chaitanya was very humorous with everyone, but he never joked with any women. No, in this incarnation did he talk about women. The Gauranga Nagari party is not approved by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Vrindavan Das Thakur. Even though one may offer all kinds of praise to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one should strictly avoid worshipping him as the Gauranga Nagara. The personal behavior of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the verses written by Sri Vrindavan Thakur have completely liquidated the lusty desires of the Gauranga Nagari. This is Apara Sampradaya, created after the departure of Lord Chaitanya, was very rampant in post-Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's era. And so it became so degraded that the potency of preaching of Lord Chaitanya was like put in the back burner. And people nearly forgot till the advent of Bhaktivinoda Thakur revived this situation, because the Sahaja Prakatas and these Sahajiyas, they mistook or misinterpreted Lord Chaitanya's philosophy and became very enamored with the women. So one has to be very strict in this regard. Here, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that because the Sahaja did not follow the proper parampara, no, they read the scriptures properly, they didn't have faith in Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru, they deviated very grossly and brought this Lord Chaitanya's mission into big misunderstanding. So much so that his teaching was just about lost because of the credibility was lost. So the sages being very condemned, and it's a lesson for us. And from this text and this purport by Srila Prabhupada, one has to be very, very vigilant how one deals with the opposite gender and how we should safeguard Lord Chaitanya's mission. And this is very, if you are any relaxed in this situation, then the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the foundation led by Srila Prabhupada can go into disarray. So it's very, very important point here Srila Prabhupada is mentioning. He said the Gauranga Nagari party is not approved by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Vrindavan Thakur. Even though one may offer all kinds of praise to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one should strictly avoid worshipping as Gauranga Nagari. Okay, so coming back to so how do we look at this situation? Sex is not it's approved for procreation. We know from Bhagavad Gita 7.1, it says sex which is not contrary to religion is sanctioned. So the sex is not itself abominable thing. It's the way being used to glamorize or to satisfy the senses and satisfy the senses. This is one that's been condemned. In this sexuality, the homosexuality and the abdominal affairs, actually was created in time of Lord Brahma. We know from Srimad Bhagavatam, let me see this verse where Lord Brahma was attacked by the demons he created. And then he has to give up his body. This is described in, let me see. Okay, I can't find the verse, but it's mentioned in one of the purports. See Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 20, verse 26. It says in this verse, Lord Brahma, approaching the Lord, addressed him thus, my Lord, please protect me from these sinful demons who were created by me under your order. They are infatuated by an appetite for sex and have come to attack me. Here in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada says, it appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demonic and is not for any saint male in the ordinary course of life. So then Brahma was so contaminated by and so disgusted by this that he had to give up his body. I think in the next verse it says, here the Lord again, Lord Brahma addresses the Lord. My Lord, you are the only one capable of ending the affliction of the distress and inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet. The Lord who can distinctly see the minds of others, perceive the Brahma's distress and say to him, cast off this impure body of yours. Thus commanded by the Lord, Brahma cast off his body. So we can see such a contaminating episode that Lord Brahma was instructed by the Lord himself to cast off his body because the demons who he created were taking him. So it's very, very serious sinful activity. So we can see the origin of this episode, Yeah. So how does it start? How does this desire for sense gratification started? What it leads to? Just give me 1 second, please. Sorry for the interruption. Why sense gratification is condemned in the Shastra and how it starts is described in the Prithu Maharaj's, when Prithu Maharaj meets the 4 Kumaras. It says, attachment to sense gratification is the cause of samsara. So why time and again in the Shastra, especially Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, for sense gratification is derided so intensely. Why? Because it says the sense attachment to sense gratification is the cause of samsara, because of repeated birth and death. It says sense gratification causes the destruction of the self. And how it starts is thinking of sense gratification. First, it starts just by the mind starting. Indriya viprakrasanti dhyatam. Then because the mind becomes agitated, just by seeing the mind become agitated, akshipratam mana. Then the discrimination powers of intelligence lost. Chetatam harte buddhi. So once the mind becomes agitated by seeing of a sense gratification, the discriminating power, the intelligence is lost. Then what happens after that? The memory is lost. And then the memory is lost, then the knowledge is destroyed. Jnana brahma, the greatest harm to the soul. So when the knowledge is lost, the discrimination is lost, the mind is agitated, then what happens? Constant thinking of money and its use for sense gratification, destruction of the goals, loss of jnana, vijnana, and then entrance to immovable life of form. So then entrance to hellish planets. So just by thinking about it, and this is how Narad Muni is trying to come to the point of instructing the king, Prishinavarishta, that just by thinking and meditating on it, this thing will lead to destruction of the self, falling down into samsara and not getting out of it. So because in the Western philosophy and knowledge, this is not very elaborated, or they're ignorant of this fact. And so they may do so much research, give so many Nobel prizes for research, but they are not getting the gist of it. This life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge, going back to Godhead. It's not for material advancement, for sense gratification. And because they lost this, they have lost this intelligence and lost this knowledge, their goals are quite different, and then leads to harassment. All these Ugda Karma, big industries, big billboards, sense gratification, being promoted as the highest goal. And because the politicians want to win the votes, and they promote all this, but it's not giving hope to this humanity. So it's very, very, very dangerous. So because Nanda is compassionate, he's telling this king about this pastime, alleged pastime of the Puranjana, and he's slowly trying to come to the point. He's alluding to king that he should give up this material life, give up the yagna, killing animals, the sacrifice, and come to the point of bhakti. So it's taking some time, but the king is now understanding, because of Narasimha's great compassion, he's alluding this again and again in a very indirect way. So the king is now coming to understand. Although in the previous chapter 25, when Naraji was instructing about this, the allegory, the king was not very ready, or was not able to understand this. But slowly, by Narad Muni's mercy, he's coming to this point. In the Bhagavad Gita, we see how he starts in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 62. One second. This verse says, Dhayato Visham Pumsa Sangaste Supayajate Sangas Sangyate Kama Kamat Krodha Vijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Just as we have mentioned in the attachment in Prithu Maharaj's with four Kumaras, and how the four Kumaras describing how the living entity, the Jiva soul, get entrapped in samsara. Here in Bhagavad Gita, in this verse 2.62, Lord Krishna explained to Arjuna that just by contemplating on the object of senses, and then the person get attached to them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust arises anger. Then the senses are lost. Similarly, in verse 340, Krishna also explains similarly. Indriyamana buddhir asyasitatam uchate eterva mokshati esa jnana ravati dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are sitting place of the lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So the mind is the boss, or the center of the senses. Although intelligence is higher than the mind, because the intelligence, until you get polluted, the mind goes out of control, and because the mind is not controlling the senses, the living entity becomes bewildered, and then the real knowledge is lost. So it's so bewildering. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita also that the mind can be the best of friend, but it can be a very bad master. So it is two-way sword. How we use the knowledge or anything for the purpose. If you use it for spiritual advancement, it is good. But if you misuse it for degradation, then is the cause we are not using that particular instrument or process properly. So it's similar here in the mind. The mind is covered by lust. Then the whole process of the Jivatma is bewildered, and he loses sense of control and a sense of direction, and the whole goal of life, spiritual goal, is lost. And then the Jivatma falls in the cycle of birth and death in samsara. Also in 343, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, intelligence, O mighty Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer the insatiable enemy known as lust. So here Krishna is to giving the process of controlling the mind. He says, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, intelligence, O mighty Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. So one needs spiritual intelligence to steady the mind. So in this chapter 6, Krishna explains later on that to control the mind, which Arjuna mentioned, is harder than to control the wind. And then Krishna said, by detachment and by practice, one can control the senses by abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice. So in that purpose, Srila Prabhupada explains, by constant chanting of Hare Krishna mantra and by purifying our senses, one can, by the abhyas, by practice, one can control the mind. Mind control is very, very difficult. And this is really explained very in detail in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. So one is abhyasa and detachment. Here Lord Krishna explained to Arjuna, just by spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, one can know what is the goal of life, how the mind is working, how the intelligence should be working, and what is the purpose of life. Once we get spiritual strength, then it's easy to control the senses and the mind, and we can advance in Krishna consciousness. So in this particular verse, can be seen very negative, but by this instruction, Narad Muni is explaining to King Parikshit to go above the senses and go above to the spiritual world, to the spiritual goal. Just give up this lowermost and come to the highermost. The lowermost can be temporary, looks very happy or exciting, but the long term is very degrading. So this is what's happening in the current situation. The current situation, the political scene, especially in Western countries, and now it's coming into India, this sense control is being loosened. So much liberation, working culture, and sense gratification is being glorified. Do what pleases you, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. This sort of culture, this sort of knowledge given by people who have already lost their intelligence is very concerning and will lead to degradation of the whole civilization. So here Lord Krishna gives the solution. Says one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus by the spiritual strength conquer the insatiable enemy known as lust. So lust is sitting within the heart through the mind, and once somebody who doesn't control it, it will lead to hellish planet. In the previous, I think the 15th or 16th chapter, Krishna explained these are the gates to hell is lust, anger, and greed. So these are the hellish. If one want to enter the hellish planet, these are the gates. So one who doesn't control this, sure to enter the hellish planet. So just try to recap what we have learned from this particular verse. So here Narad Muni is instructing King Parikshit to control his senses, especially the mind. And mind is a two-edged sword. If one doesn't control, one can go into lowermost and go into eternal samsara cycle of birth and death. But one who controls and go up, elevated himself or herself to the spiritual world. Sense gratification and especially lust, this to lower form of life in the hellish planet. So king being instructed to give up his lowermost and elevate himself to higher planet, higher goals. And especially these two gates, the lower gates, are very, very, Prabhupada mentioned, is meant for animals. She says, so dwara is meant for horse and dogs. So how it can be helpful to the one who wants to elevate himself or herself to spiritual life. Prabhupada mentioned that even in Vrindavan, the sadhus who get involved in these sort of things, there's no rectification except when they take birth as hogs, dogs. And so by just being in that body and staying in Vrindavan, then they can be rectified. It's a very serious crime to have this activity in the Holy Dham. Prabhupada is very, very harsh, but to the point, how one can be rectified if this is this sort of sinful activity. Just by taking birth as hogs or dogs or monkeys in Vrindavan, person who has lost their intelligence, who they commit this sinful activity, can become purified. So Vrindavan is a very holy place, but we can see when you go to the Vrindavan, there are many hogs, dogs, and also monkeys doing their activities, which seem to be contrary to the Holy Dham. But then this is the reason why by this method, Prabhupada is saying they are becoming purified, they can be elevated to the spiritual world. Otherwise, there's no solution, no goal, no hope for them. So again, recapping, Narad Muni is asking the king to give up these lower modes, especially sex and mind control, sex, and give up the lower modes, and to come to the higher spiritual elevation by controlling sense gratification, especially lust, which pushes one to the lower modes and to the hellish planet. And he's giving this lesson in a very subtle way. So from nostril to mouth to tongue, Narad Muni is now come to these two lower points, and he's instructing king. And eventually we'll see from the chapter ahead of chapter 30 and onwards, how eventually, by the great mercy of Naradji, the king become elevated and comes to his senses and gives all this nonsense activity. So a great lesson for us. Thank you. I'll conclude here. Any comments, questions? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, it doesn't seem to be so in the class here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpaduruvescha.
Kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam
pavanebhyo
vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Namaste Vaishnava
ki
ki
jai.
Jai.
Please, Nanda Vraja Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Hari Bol. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much for
Nice
class.
class.
Thank you everyone for listening patiently. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.